Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Lafayette and Leadership Southwest Louisiana as we talk about redistricting, a very important topic coming up. I'm George Swift of the Southwest Louisiana Economic Development Alliance, which is the chamber and economic development group for our 5 parishes here in Southwest Louisiana. And I'm happy to be joined by Troy Wayman, who will say a few words in just a moment. But we want to thank all of you for participating in your leadership programs. This is very essential to our future to develop leaders, and we've got a great class in both organizations this year, and we're excited about that. There are many issues facing our state. A lot of them are based on the congressional districts, the state representative districts, the state senate districts, the judgeship districts, school board, Bessie board, public service commission. So all of this will be dealt with after the census figures are released later in the year. So we're going to find out all about that. But thank you very much for joining us today. And now I'd like to turn things over to the president and CEO of One Acadiana, Troy Wayman.
Thank you, George. Appreciate the partnership and appreciate everyone joining us this morning. We recognized a long time ago that our voice is much louder as a super region than it is individually as the 2 separate regions between Lake Charles and Lafayette or Acadiana. And we're leveraging that. We're leveraging that with our voices in Baton Rouge. And we were hoping this year that our Acadiana / Southwest Louisiana Day in Baton Rouge was going to be an in-person event. Unfortunately, we're still not certain about what COVID restrictions are going to be required. We weren't leading up to the planning of this. So we did this virtually as we did last year. Last year was our first virtual Acadiana Day in Baton Rouge. So it was actually a very big success, but we do look forward to the day that we can all meet in person and see each other face to face and be together and speak with our representatives face to face. We are excited to have these leadership classes join us. As George mentioned, the vacuum of leadership in our communities is one of the challenges that we all face. And in the absence of recycling some of the leadership that's been through our communities in the past, we have to create new opportunities and new leaders in the community. And you guys represent those leaders that are coming in our community and are willing to step up and be leaders in the community. So we're excited about that. Without further ado, I would like to turn things over to Andre Bro to kick off our program.
Good morning, and thank you, Troy. My name's Andre Bro, and I work on the team at One Acadiana with Troy, and thanks to everyone for joining us. We're gonna have kind of a flexible, nimble program today. Representative John Stefanski, who is chairman of the House and Governmental Affairs Committee, is going to be joining us. That's the committee that leads the redistricting process on the House side. And then Senator Sharon Hewitt, who leads the Senate and Governmental Affairs Committee, is supposed to be joining us as well. And she leads the process on the Senate side. So when they are able to join, we will turn the floor over to them. But Representative Stefanski, Chairman Stefanski, actually has a committee meeting at this time. So he's getting his committee started as we speak, and then he's going to pop out to be with us. But in the meantime, we are honored to have Bo Staples and Mitch Rabelais from La B with us. They have an excellent presentation on redistricting that I think will frame things up really well for us. So I'm going to hand over the floor to them. As you have questions too about redistricting, the redistricting process or politics or anything related to our super region effort to keep the 3rd congressional district together, please enter those questions into the chat bot and we will try to take the questions as we can. So I'll hand the floor over to Bo, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre, and I will get this screen share going. All right, that look okay? All right, and if I miss Chairman Hewitt or Chairman Stefanski hopping on, please interrupt me. I don't want to make them wait. That will not be good for me. So thank y'all for having me. This is a short presentation that kind of touches on the bullet points of redistricting, the high level. I know we don't have a ton of time, and so if you have questions, like Andre said, please enter them in the chat. We'll try and address them as they come in. So generally, redistricting basics. We redistrict based on population, not on the number of registered voters, but on the census results. We were supposed to get the census results back December 31st. That did not happen. Generally, we would be obligated to redistrict the year following when the president receives the results on December 31st. Because that didn't happen, that will not happen until later in 2021. We are actually not obligated to redistrict until 2022. Most of the buzz is that we will have redistricting sometime between Washington Mardi Gras and actual Mardi Gras. So that should be a fun period of time for everyone. So we take the how the population is split up. We take the ideal population, we take the total population divided by the number of districts, 39 Senate districts, 105 House districts, and 6 congressional districts. There's what's called a deviation. So in congressional redistricting, you actually have to be as exact as possible. You can have a variance of 1 voter. So you will get some split precincts. They actually challenged a district in Pennsylvania a few years ago that had a variance of 13 people because they drew it on precinct lines, and the districts were tossed out because they should have had a variance of 1 for all their districts. So that will get interesting when you start trying to figure out which precincts to split where. But the deviation from that ideal population number that you get, you are allowed to have a deviation. When it comes to the state districts, we're allowed to have a deviation of up to 10%. There's a court case for that. Generally, we as a state have tried to stay within 5%. Oh, and here we go. So exact for congressional, plus or minus 5% for the legislative, but the legal standard is 10%. So to give you an idea of where population was in 2010, the last time we redistricted, a House district was generally going to have about 43,000 people based on the census results in 2010. That generally amounted to about 25 to 30,000 voters in a district, depending on the amount of people who registered to vote there. Using the 2019 estimates, the House districts will have about 44,000 people. So a gain of about 1,000 people in a House district. If you have a House district in your area that did not gain at least 1,000 people, you'll most likely be picking up precincts. If you gain more than 1,000 people, you will likely need to shed a precinct or 2. So to give you an idea of where population has moved in the last 9 years, this is a chart put forth by the House and Senate governmental staffs, just kind of in their presentations. That kind of shows you the Delta region has lost a lot of people, really rural Louisiana in general. Lafayette is growing, Lake Charles is growing, the North Shore is growing. The suburb parishes of Baton Rouge are growing while Baton Rouge is losing population to them. But just to give you a good look of where growth is happening and where growth is not happening. You can kind of tell any areas that are the deep red are probably those districts in those areas are going to get bigger. And this is another map that shows based on a percentage basis, just another growth chart, if you will, for those areas. And so here's how they did the House districts in 2010. They divided the states up into the districts where you see the dark blue borders. They divided the state up into different regions. So this group, I'm assuming, is very interested in the Acadiana region. So they took these regions and they said, okay, how many people live in these regions? And what is our ideal population for a House district? and that gave them an idea of what each of these regions could support based on a number of seats. And then the political jockeying kind of took place. You try and factor in term limits, which seats are open. Those are generally more on the chopping block as far as a House district. Senate districts that are open can be on a chopping block. Depends on which House member is trying to jump up there. Obviously, with the president of the Senate being from Lafayette, and the chair of House Governmental being from Lafayette, they will be able to defend the Acadiana region and keep it intact and draw it as they see fit for the most part. So y'all are very lucky to have those people in those positions. So when it comes to drawing these maps, most of the states will wind up in court. One side or the other is not going to be happy with the way the maps are done. And so we are one of a handful of states where the legislature and the governor are actually split party. I think there's like a dozen of them maybe. And so, you know, we will be involved in litigation. If you saw last week, there was a lawsuit filed by former Attorney General Eric Holder's group, which was really just kind of a press headline grab, but saying, hey, courts, be ready to redraw lines in the state of Louisiana. The state of Louisiana was sued. Be ready to redraw the congressional lines in the state of Louisiana because we foresee a deadlock between the legislature and the governor. So what happens when it goes to court? The state Supreme Court will handle legislative seats. As far as the congressional map, it's a race to the courthouse. If it is based on the Rucho case, the federal courts basically said, if you are challenging a map saying that it is gerrymandered on a partisan basis, we're going to kick that to the state courts. The federal courts will not deal in partisan gerrymandering cases. If it is based on a racial gerrymandering claim, it will be handled in federal court. So that it'll be interesting to see which groups take which stance as far as that goes. So the Voting Rights Act has been the Section 5 was of the Voting Rights Act was struck down, not the entire Voting Rights Act. You might hear people say, oh, Voting Rights Act does not apply to us anymore. It actually does still apply to us. Just the formula for pre-clearance, we don't have to go through the pre-clearance process because the formula was the only part that was struck down. Section 2 still applies, and this is where you will get the Voting Rights Act challenges will most likely be based on these 3 points. Are the districts compact? Are they politically cohesive? Do they split neighborhoods or areas of similar culture? There's a whole list of things that parts, how they define different communities of interest and neighborhoods. If you can split certain neighborhoods, it can get really tedious. And then ultimately the defeat of minority candidates. Are certain areas split up to defeat minority candidates? And that's one of the preconditions for jingles. Obviously, they take all of these in totality to determine whether or not you've met that. So that's all I have for the redistricting portion. I don't know if y'all have any questions. Not seeing a chat deal.
And if anybody does have questions, just a reminder, if you enter them into the Q&A or the chat, we will take some questions as we go.
Awesome. Well, then I will hand it over to Mitch Rabelais, who is our resident historian here at Lobby and our communications director. So here you go, Mitch.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about redistricting through the history in Louisiana. I'm going to touch on a couple points of note. And really during the Huey and Earl Long era, redistricting was used more as a tool of political retribution than something that was actually used to ensure fair and proportional representation. There are many stories, if you look through history, of Huey and Earl Long finding a legislator who weren't with them on a vote, drawing that legislator out of a district, doing so during a special session or a regular session, just inserting that legislation in there and not waiting until the annual redrawing. I think the most notable case of this was in 1935. Huey Long was U.S. Senator at the time and has the legislature redraw the 27th Judicial District. He separates St. Landry and Evangeline parishes. As the One Acadiana folks know, St. Landry and Evangeline are in separate judicial districts to this day, but Lafayette, Vermilion, and Acadia are still in one judicial district. It's because of this event. Huey Long redrew the districts. He eliminates the seat of Judge Benjamin Povey with that. Povey was a political enemy. The judge's son-in-law and he later get in an altercation in the hallway. Shots rang out, and both Senator Long and Dr. Weiss are killed over this redistricting fight. We get into the 1970s, and because of the haphazard manner in which redistricting had been handled in Louisiana, federal courts come in and throw out all of the district lines just months before the 71-72 elections. And the thing that's important about that is we had violated the one man, one vote rule. And so what had happened was we had kept the same district lines from about the 50s, and as parishes gained population, they would just get another seat. So Caddo Parish, which was Senate District 1, as Shreveport grew in population, they just got 3 senators that all ran in the same district. So if you lived in Caddo Parish, you voted for 3 senators, or if you lived in Ascension, you just voted for 1. So the federal courts threw that out in 72. I see we have Representative Stefanski on. So Andre, you want me to go ahead and pause?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Mitch. And we're going to get back to you shortly, Mitch, because the history you're sharing is really fascinating. But we do want to pause now because we are honored to be joined by Chairman John Stefanski, who is actually chairing a committee meeting this morning at the same time. So we want to turn the floor over to you just to set some context. Bo Staples with Lobby just talked a little bit about the redistricting process. Mitch was getting into some of the history, but if you could share from your perspective, kind of how you see things playing out in the legislature and anything else you think this group needs to know.
Yeah, so, since the last time we kind of talked, we've gotten some more information. And so obviously we've gotten the apportionment data now. So we know how many congressmen we're going to have. We're going to keep our same number of congressmen, which is great, which is a huge win. We also know what our ideal House districts are going to be. I believe it's right at 44,000, I think maybe 44.4. And then we know what our congressional, our PSC, and our Bessie districts, what those ideals are going to be. So we've gotten some more clarity, but we still don't have that PL 95 data, which allows us to be able to actually draw our individual districts down to the precinct level. We're still waiting on that. That has also, we've got a little more clarity on that. They told us we should expect that by the end of September. Now they're telling us it looks more like August, which is good, gives us some extra time. But there's still a lot of work that's going to have to go into the process when we finally get that information. And one of the biggest things is, that staff just needs to dissect it all. So when we get that from the Census Bureau, staff's going to have to sit down with all that information, put it in a format that we can use, and then kind of go forward with that timeline, hopefully having some, public testimony, and then hopefully going on a road show to be able to hit all around the state in an effort to educate people on what the numbers look like, and then also to get input and specifically in those areas where we've seen a lot of loss, especially in some of the North Louisiana areas. We've seen a lot of loss there. I think the estimates I've heard is each of those congressional districts combined may have to get upwards of 80,000 people. So yeah, so we have a little more clarity. I've met with, I just hit number 99 yesterday, 99 of the 104 members I have met with, it's been great. It's been very educational for me to learn about not only the priorities of the members, but their opinions on the other maps. And then they're just opinions of their geographical region. Everybody's got a different perspective about their district and about their congressional district. And it's been a lot of fun for me and for staff learning about that, and because so much of this process, redistricting is very personal. What I've learned is every single member, it's very, very personal to them. They all have an opinion, and everyone needs to make sure that their voice is being heard and that they're advocating for what they would like to see in these maps when we go to redraw them. So it's very important for me, but I think it's also very important for these members to get their one-on-one time, and I've enjoyed doing that. But with that said, that's kind of where we're at right now. I want to go through all 104 members. Only have a few more to hit. We've gotten that apportionment data, which is great. That apportionment data has also triggered our constitutional deadline, which now says that, okay, we have to finish redistricting by the end of 2022. So that's been triggered. We have a little more clarity. And with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions or give any more insight on any specific topic that y'all would like me to.
Well, thank you. And we'll allow folks to enter questions, comments into the chat, but we were also joined roughly at the same time you joined, Chairman, by Senator Sharon Hewitt, Chairman of the Senate and Governmental Affairs Committee. So we'll turn it over to Senator Hewitt for some Senate perspective.
Well, thanks, Andre, and hi, Chairman Stefanski. I'm sorry I didn't get to hear the very beginning of your comments, but I'm looking forward to working with John. We have a pretty tall task ahead of us. Folks keep telling me you're going to make a lot of friends and maybe a few enemies along the way because it's hard to please everyone. But I know that we're going to work really hard to make sure that everyone's voices are heard, as the chairman has said. On the Senate, we're taking a little bit slower approach to it. I know they're working with some estimated population numbers and having some conversations with their members. We haven't done that. We don't have as big a group on the Senate side, but we are waiting for the final numbers to come down to us from the precinct level. We're building out our team. We're working with the House members in developing a set of principles that we will use in both committees, by which we will establish kind of what constitutes a fair map. And so what are the boundary conditions that we're going to have? And as you probably know, these districts are drawn through a legislative instrument. So these will be legislative bills that are filed on the House side or on the Senate side. The House members, of course, will focus on their House districts. We'll focus on the Senate districts. And we'll talk about how we kind of divide the workload on congressional districts. We'll do BESI, we'll do the Public Service Commission. We'll do the Supreme Court, I believe, this year. And then there's discussion about whether we would tackle any of the other judicial court systems. And so, this is a hot topic around the country. We know that, we have to be able to demonstrate that our maps are fair. They represent the demographics of our state. And the governor will have an opportunity then to either sign these bills or veto them. And should he veto, then of course the legislature has the opportunity to override a veto. And we expect, as has been done in many states already, that there will be, potentially litigation just because people want to have another whack at it and have input through the judicial system on how we redistrict. So we will do a roadshow once we get the new numbers, which we expect to be sometime in September. The House Committee and the Senate Committee, we will travel the state and meet with groups such as this one and show you the numbers and get your input in terms of how you would like to be represented. And we will take all of that input and try to, put that together in a map or multiple maps, most likely in a special session in January or February of next year. And so it's going to be a very open and transparent process, Andre. We want to make sure that people's voices are heard, elected leaders around the state, business groups such as yours, and of course, every individual citizen. We're working to build out on our website, the legislative website, a place where, again, data and information will be shared so that everyone can participate in the process. And, I'm quite optimistic. It's a lot of work, but I'm quite optimistic that we will do our job and fulfill our responsibilities to redistrict our state in the timeline, as John mentioned. We will get it done.
And I know y'all have your hands full, and thank you both for your leadership on this. And we're joined this morning by the leadership classes, both Leadership Lafayette and Leadership Southwest Louisiana. And I've seen kudos come through the chat from both groups. And I know Leadership Lafayette will be there next Wednesday for their day at the Capitol. So they may find you while they're there to talk more about redistricting. And Senator Hewitt, you talked about all the different levels of redistricting that y'all are going to be discussing, from the legislature to Bessie all the way up to Congress. Our primary sort of advocacy goal as a super region is to keep the 3rd congressional district as unified as possible, to keep Lake Charles and Lafayette together. Could y'all talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges we might anticipate in that advocacy, and how we can most effectively advocate for that goal?
Well, let me just mention this and I'll show you. I know this is not very sophisticated, but this is the map of the congressional districts. And so, I know, and you all have made it, quite clear that the Lake Charles Lafayette district wants to continue to stay together. What we do know from preliminary numbers is that we've lost population in North Louisiana and we've gained population in South Louisiana. And so conceptually, then those districts in the north will have to grow geographically, and the districts in the south will have to shrink geographically, for us to have population numbers that are plus or minus 5%. And so how do we do that? So that, that is exactly the challenge, for these other 2 districts, districts 4 and 5, to grow geographically. I mean, they're bound already with the state lines to the east and the west and the north. So the only direction they could really grow would be to the south, which begins cutting into the district that you all are wanting to keep together. Obviously the other scenario would dramatically change our districts. And that would be to have, one east-west district along I-20. The folks up in North Louisiana don't want that. And so, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to balance, all those different needs and different opinions, but that, quite frankly, is kind of where the debate will be. And, we're going to do our very best. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting with Congresswoman Letlow, right after this call, and she's coming to visit to talk to me about her opinion. I have a pretty good idea. I know what she's going to tell me. And so we'll work on that. But that's going to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges before us on the congressional maps.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. I mean, certainly it's like Chairwoman Hewitt said, it's the 2 North Louisiana districts. If they need more population, which we expect they will, they have to grow geographically. And the only place they can grow is south. I mean, they can't go into Arkansas, they can't go into Texas, and they can't go into Mississippi. And so what does that mean for the 3rd? Well, I mean, if specifically if Congressman Johnson needs more people, it's would have to come into the 3rd if we keep that current configuration. So it's going to be a difficult task trying to manage all of these districts. I know how important being in that area it is to keep Lafayette and Lake Charles together. I understand, that's the purpose of this group, is to make sure that geographical region stays together. So, but look, it's just going to be some tough conversations. Chairwoman Hewitt and I we have a tough task ahead of us. But what can you do? The question was posed, what can we do? It's reach out to as many senators and representatives as you can, make sure they understand that. Make sure our current sitting congressman, Congressman Higgins understands that that's important to this group, because the congressman, just as Senator Hewitt said, she's meeting with Congresswoman Letlow. I met with her yesterday. They have an opinion on what they want their districts to look like. And so they need to hear from the constituents what the people want as well. It's early in the process. Until we really get our detailed data, it's going to be hard to say exactly, where those districts have to go. But you can already see the problems, and the problems are specifically geographically. The 2 North Louisiana ones have to grow, and they can only grow south.
Well, that makes sense. And you'll keep hearing from us. I know both of y'all have taken multiple meetings from us already, and we appreciate that very much. You're going to keep hearing from us Just one kind of last comment on the timeline too, before y'all hop off, because I know you have a busy day at the Capitol. Just to confirm, Rep. Stefanski, you said the special session on redistricting is likely to take place between Washington Mardi Gras and Mardi Gras proper? Is that?
I think
kinda what we should
that's a good safe bet. Yeah, and speaking with it, obviously that's a Senate president and a speaker decision. But speaking with leadership, that's my understanding. Their goal is still early 2022. I think somebody who was trying to put some odds on something, which you just said, in between those two dates, probably looks like a good timeline. But obviously, nothing set in stone. That's all subject to change. But I think just a rough timeline, and Chairwoman Hewitt can comment on it as well. Speaking with leadership, I think that's a pretty good bet at this point.
Should make Washington Mardi Gras a lot of fun this year, John.
Absolutely.
Well, we will see y'all there as well. So thank you all again, both very much. Appreciate your time with us, and we'll let you get back to your busy days at the Capitol.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And at this point, I'll hand the floor back over to Mitch to resume the presentation on the history of redistricting.
Sure. So as I mentioned, in the 1970s, what we really saw when it came to redistricting is because of the haphazard manner in which districts were drawn in the Huey and Earl Long era, the federal courts came out and said that Louisiana's districts violated the one man, one vote rule. This decision was handed down just a couple months before voters went to the polls, and the legislature was faced with the prospect of the 1972 elections having every legislator having to run statewide. So what the courts did is they had to find a third party to redraw those districts that was not the legislature. They went to the Public Affairs Research Council, and Ed Steinmal was appointed the special master. Ed Steinmal is a very special person in the history of Law B, our organization, because shortly afterwards he left PAR to be our founding president. What he did is create 105 House districts, 39 Senate districts, and really what they did there is create the modern districts that we know today. A lot of those lines are really the ones that were drawn by Ed Steinmal and PAR in that era. If you look on the slide, you'll see some of those maps. Those are original maps we found in our archives here at Law B from that 72 session. And you could see the painstaking process. They had to use colored pencils to fill in the districts and find the precincts where they could. Let me get over to the next slide. So we get to the 1990s. This is where we get to, it almost sounds like football formations, the Z and the wedge. These are congressional districts that are taught in almost every college level political science class in America. And so in 1990, we lost a congressional seat. We went from 8 down to 7. And so the legislature decided to draw that into a majority minority district. That is the old 4th district. So if you look to the left, you'll see the map. It touched almost every major city in Louisiana, started in Shreveport, went up to the state line, came down, grabbed Ruston and Grambling, went back up, came back down to Monroe, went down the Mississippi River, grabbed Alexandria, went into St. Landry, Opelousas, went over to the Florida parishes, grabbed Amite, came back down and grabbed part of Lafayette. Obviously a very interesting shape to the district. In 1994, after Congressman Cleo Fields had the seat for 2 years, the federal courts threw the lines out as unconstitutional and drew the 2nd district, that's the wedge. We went from the Z to the wedge. Again, another majority minority district that started down in the river parishes, went over to Lafayette and worked its way kind of along I-49 up to Shreveport. More litigation ensued, and actually the US Supreme Court had to issue a stay in 1994 just so the election could be held. The district was caught up in litigation so much that the lines changed 4 times between 1992 and 1996, with the lawsuits filing back and forth, with Congressman Fields having to defend his district. He actually represented himself before the US Supreme Court, having to go back and forth. Finally, the maps were thrown out in 1996 by the legislature, and they drew the 7 districts that we knew up until 2010 when we lost another seat. So I'm going to stop there. That is the brief history of redistricting. If y'all have any questions, Andre.
And I did not know about the Z and the wedge, so that is really fascinating. Anyone have any questions for now? If you want to think about questions a little bit more, We'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end as well. And what we can do now is get some reflections from some of our other super region stakeholders. So we have with us today on our panel, Amy Thibodeau, who is the president and CEO of the Acadia Parish Chamber of Commerce. We have Angela Morrison, who is the chair of One Acadiana's Governmental Affairs Committee, and we have Ronnie Petrie, who is the chair of the Southwest Governmental Affairs Committee. So we'll just get some comments from each of their perspectives on what they've heard so far and why this conversation is so important. And we'll start with Amy.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. So the Lake Charles and Acadiana super region, this dates back to 2012 when we signed a compact amongst both all the organizations along that I-10 corridor. So we've been doing this for a really long time. I mean, almost 10 years now that we've said Acadiana and Lake Charles, we have similar interests, similar industries, similar assets, and we see the value in us working together. And this was something that actually followed New Orleans and Baton Rouge doing something similar. So this is not something unusual, but it was our effort to counter, Baton Rouge and New Orleans working together and saying, wait, if you're going to do that, so will we. And since then, we've been working very closely along with the Lake Charles and Acadiana regions. And me and Acadia Parish, if you don't know, I'm in Crowley, so I'm dead in the middle, which is really interesting because I've gotten to experience the benefits of both of the metro regions growing. I think there's a lot of opportunity along that I-10 corridor, and redistricting is an extremely important part of kind of our region working together. Those lines are really important. Redistricting is going to be really interesting. Everything to every single city council district gets redrawn and evaluated. So there's a lot of energy and effort that goes into this along so many levels. I'll turn it over to you, Andre.
Thank you, Amy. And Amy has been the host for our super region meetings in Crowley, which we call the demilitarized zone, right between Lafayette and Lake Charles. Next up on our panel is Angela Morrison, who serves as One Acadiana's Governmental Affairs Chair.
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you, Andre and Troy and all the team at One Acadiana for putting this together. I was very happy to hear from Representative Stefanski as well as Senator Hewitt this morning, just to understand better what we're looking at in regards to redistricting in our area. And as Amy's already said, at the risk of repeating what she said, it's so important that Acadiana stay together, the super region stay together. With Southwest Louisiana, all of the things that they've gone through this past in 2020, it's even more important that we continue to ride this wave of economic strength, because prior to COVID and hurricanes and other things going on, it was so important that we, are able to work together to bring the resources to our area, and being able to create the momentum that will influence political will because of our like-mindedness in regards to culture. It's a no-brainer when it comes to why this is important. But I have to just give kudos to Marion Fox, who was my co-chair prior to her unfortunate passing, and all the work that she and Amy and Ronnie did together in regards to creating this super region stakeholder group. I'm just so honored to be included, and I'm honored to be your governmental affairs chair this year, especially with everything that is going on with redistricting. I hope that the relationships that I bring to the table will be helpful for Acadiana staying together, because we have created a wave, a momentum towards great things, and we want to just be able to continue that. So I'll turn it back over to you, Andre.
Thank you, Angela. And now we'll hear from Ronnie Petrie, chair of the Southwest Governmental Affairs Committee.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in today, and I thank all the panelists for being together. Angela, thank you for your kind comments. I appreciate that. I'm probably one of the few, along with George and maybe a couple of others on this panel this morning, that has experienced redistricting 10 years ago. And I can tell you it's quite a ride. But I challenge each and every one of you to participate in this. I'm going to give you my 3 Ps and a triple Ps in a minute, okay? But the super region is of utmost importance. The thing we have to do better is that we need to include more people in what we're doing. So each and every one of you that are on the Zoom call with us today, I challenge you and I urge you to participate with us. But we also have to start to do other things than just fight redistricting every 10 years. We need to start to find some commonality and continue to push forward. It's very important that we do this. Amy alluded to other regions that have been started. I mean, that's the way to go. We in Jeff Davis Parish found out a long time ago, you can't do it with just a few people, but in numbers, you can do about anything. So today I ask and I encourage all of you to participate. So we've been real familiar with the Triple P program from SBA. Almost everyone knows about that. So I'm going to give you the Ronnie Petrie Triple P play on the redistricting, okay? First of all, we all going to have to be passionate and we're going to have to be involved, and it's going to take people and it's going to take numbers. Listen, I just heard the same thing I heard 10 years ago. They don't want an east-west district in the North Louisiana. Jeff Davis Parish got left out totally in one proposal last time, and so did part of Acadia Parish. I don't know. I love North Louisiana. I love Louisiana. But the fact is, this 9-parish region that has about 760,000 people in it, this delegation, congressional district, needs to stay together. The commonality is there. If you really get down to it, I remember Mike Heinen telling them, said, you need to keep this district together because then people up there talk funny. And if you know Mike Heinen, he's got a strong Cajun accent. So it kind of brought a little humor into the room. But the reality is, if you get down to it, probably most everybody in this 9-parish district is kin in some form. So you keeping family together and you keeping commonality with rice farming and different things of that nature. The second thing we have to do, the second P, is be prepared. We have to know our facts and our figures. We have to be able to stand up and know the players involved. We have to know why the guy in North Louisiana doesn't want his district split up. I mean, they too are passionate. You heard Representative Stefanski. And by the way, I will tell you, both individuals that are chairing these committee chairs are honorable people, good people, and they care about the state of Louisiana. So we have someone we can work with. But the thing we got to remember, we have to go and present our facts and our figures. And we need you to be in Baton Rouge to testify. We need you to get a red card or a green card, whatever it is, because they do listen to people when they show up and they participate. Now, I will tell you, I laugh and I tell this story a lot. And I told it to the leadership group the other day, leadership class the other day in Lake Charles. By the time we would leave the Capitol and get on top of the I-10 bridge to head back to Calcasieu and Jeff Davis and Acadia parishes, it already had changed. So a lot of times we were able to get off on the Port Allen exit to whip around and go back and start talking again. So it's going to take a commitment. Get with your employers. If you're self-employed, that's great. Take time out of your schedule, but get with your employers and come along with us and participate. And the other thing is be prepared, but also get other people to be prepared and to participate with us. It takes numbers. And finally, we have to stay persistent. The game will change minute by minute, but we need to come together as a region to say, this is what we want. I need y'all to be able to support Jeff Davis Parish. As its economic development director chair, I can't be out there alone. We can't be out there alone. It is going to take the parishes that have joined us to help us fight for the cause to keep us together. And it's important that what's good for, if Amy gets a new business in Acadia Parish, that's great. If George gets a new business in Calcasieu Parish, that's great for Jeff Davis. And in the region, it's great for Jeff Davis. And it's good for every other parish in the region. So again, in closing, I think we need to be an everyday team, an everyday super region, that we're always thinking about the future. We do come together to come up with ideas. We've been trying since 2012, but we will certainly take other people being involved If you'll contact us, give us your thoughts, say you want to participate, now's the time to start getting together to do this. And so finally, I'm in closing. There's an old Buck Owens song that I thought about this morning. Y'all don't even know who Buck Owens is, but I see a couple of other older guys on here. They probably know that. And it's called Together Again. So I figured we were talking the other day, do we do t-shirts? Do we do a slogan? But in the end, I think one verse or stanza or whatever you call it, it says, the key to my heart you hold in your hand and nothing else matters. We're together again. So it's up to us, and we've got the hands to join together to do what we need to do. And maybe there's time that there needs to be an east-west district, a congressional district, and keep the people together that needs to be. So thank you for allowing me to participate in this morning. And please, I ask you, join with us.
Thank you,
Thank you, Andre.
I see applause from your other panelist members, and I think I might need to go ahead and update our Super Region 1 pager to include Ronnie's 3P play and Together Again. So we'll be making updates to that. And you kind of addressed the one question we got in the chat, which is about sort of the senators' comments and the representatives' comments about the districts needing to come further south in North Louisiana if they want to keep separate districts. Are we proposing alternatives? And I think part of what the alternatives will depend on are sort of those more granular numbers from the census that we're still waiting on that will allow the maps to be generated. But you mentioned one of the options on the table is to consolidate the northern part of the state so that you don't have that creep into Southwest Louisiana and all the way over to the North Shore to Bogalusa in terms of Congresswoman Letlow's district. So there's going to be a lot of discussion, and it's going to get a little more in the weeds once those numbers, those more granular numbers, do come down from the census. And I see one more question, and it's about North Louisiana's interests, and is anyone fighting for us to be separated? And I think the answer to that is no. And the answer to the second part of the question was which is it just making populations work? The answer to that is yes. They have to draw the population from somewhere. And if Shreveport wants their own district and Monroe wants their own district, the fear is that they'll take away from the third district. So that's why what we're doing together collectively is so important. And as Ronnie mentioned, this isn't the only goal that we can work together on collectively. It's one of the most timely and urgent goals because of the redistricting process that is ahead of us. But so we'll be focused on that presently, but then we'll be also looking to the future and figuring out, as Angela talked about, that political will that we have together, the shared strength that we have together, how can we leverage that to achieve additional goals as well? With that, I'm going to hand the floor back over to George and Troy to close us out. I'll just make one or two quick announcements too while we do that. Troy, Angela, myself, and Keely from One Acadiana are all actually heading to the Capitol after this virtual event to have lunch with our Acadiana delegation. We are going to be bringing our Super Region 1 pagers with us. I won't have them updated with Ronnie's 3Ps and Together Again yet, but we'll make those updates. So we'll be meeting with some additional legislators in person over lunch today to talk more about this and other things happening during the session. And I know the Leadership Lafayette class has their day at the Capitol next Wednesday, I believe. So more opportunities to visit with legislators and engage on these issues. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Troy.
Thanks, Andre. And Ronnie, I do remember Buck Owens very well. Buck Owens and Roy Clark. I remember them very well. Buck Owens had that red, white, and blue guitar. So maybe I'm dating myself in remembering that. But yeah, I remember them very well. Listen, I want to thank everyone for being with us today. And I agree, someone made the comment of let's take Ronnie on the road. I think his passion is clear. And I think that we all need to have the same passion as we advocate for our regions, our super region. and the redistricting effort. Again, as Andre mentioned, we are going to have lunch with our delegation today. We're looking forward to that, and we will continue the discussion with them there. And again, appreciate everyone's time today, everyone's attention. And I know, as Andre mentioned as well, the Leadership Lafayette class is going to be in Baton Rouge next week. We wish them well and good luck in their events, and wish both leadership classes all the best as they continue on towards graduation. Thank you all for being with us today. George, did you have anything you wanted to add? You're on mute, George.
There we go. No, I just want to thank everybody again and appreciate working with One Acadiana. It's very important that we work together as a super region along the I-10 corridor. We have a lot in common, and I think the strength of us working together will bear much fruit. So thank you all for being with us.
And that concludes our program. Everyone have a good day.